Revelation 2330. From the 10th of May 1942. Life conditions according to the degree of maturity of the soul. Knowledge of the being before it. The grace of embodiment as a human being is only granted to the being when it is willing to take this last path, that is when its will decides to do so. As soon as the being has covered the course of development in all previous embodiments, it has reached the degree of maturity which is the condition for the last embodiment as a human being, although it is also different and therefore also requires different living conditions in the last stage. And the earthly life, which it has to live for the purpose of its final liberation, is presented to the soul created through the union of different substances. And it is still at its own discretion whether it wants to change on earth or not. Fully aware of her earthly task, she now takes earthly life upon herself, ready in this state to conquer all resistance and to free herself from the form. It also knows about the fate it has to endure, but it only sees the external living conditions beforehand, not its spiritual development, and feels fully strong enough to master earthly life. In accordance with its state of maturity, which could be reached in the most varied gradations before but always allows an embodiment as a human being, earthly life is now granted to it, and more or less sorrowful and full of renunciation. For the soul must be offered the last opportunities to mature in such a way that it can shape itself into a being of light in this short earthly life if it makes use of it. But its living conditions will always be such that it has the opportunity for active love activity, and its maturing will depend on how far it fills its life with love activity. It is offered the opportunity to do so in all circumstances of life. The human being who lacks knowledge, who therefore knows nothing of the effects of his way of life in eternity, can also be willing to help and serve. The soul only needs to decide for good or evil on earth, and it can do so in every situation in life, even in the most primitive circumstances. The earthly circumstances, however, are conditioned by its development in the preliminary stages. If the being was extraordinarily impulsive before, it has to fight against its impulses in earthly life and needs corresponding living conditions in which the soul can purify itself. The soul is in no way disadvantaged in the possibilities of higher development, although it appears that earthly conditions are a hindrance to it. The resistances earthly life offers every individual person have to be overcome, and some souls need greater resistance, and therefore the external living conditions are allocated to it as they are helpful to it. God knows about the shaping of every soul during its embodiment as a human being. He also knows about its strength of will, and His love seeks to make the course of development easy for every soul. If the soul endeavors to make use of every opportunity, then the human being's destiny will also be easily bearable for him, and God will shorten his path of life as soon as he strives to mature spiritually. God's love brings people together in such a way that they can serve each other, that one can instruct the other, that one can give to the other what the latter lacks, and thus spiritual gifts are also offered to every person, albeit in the most diverse form and to the most diverse extent. Yet what is offered will always suffice to show him the right path he should take, and his willingness alone is decisive as to what benefits his soul will derive from it. The knowledge of God is likewise suggested to all people. If not from person to person, then the spiritual beings are active and give him mental indications. And it is always up to him to accept or not accept spiritual gifts. That is to believe or reject what is conveyed to him mentally or through people. And since God has given every person intellect and free will, he is also responsible for how he uses both. Every good will is recognized by God and help is granted to him accordingly. This help has already been given to him through endless times, and the spiritual being also knows before its embodiment that God's strength and love will assist it. However, earthly life has to be passed without any recollection in order not to endanger the human being's free will. Yet no soul embodies itself without knowing its earthly progress, and it accepts this last embodiment with full will in its desire to finally become free from every external form. Amen.